Hello and welcome to HPA-Global Insights, where we'll be interviewing experts from the dietary supplement, nutritional ingredient, and overall natural health food industry. Please like, subscribe, turn on that little notification bell, and comment below. Now on with the show. Okay, welcome to the show. Today we're joined by our friend Tony Talalay. He's the CEO of Brassica Protection Products. Tony, how's it going? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Jeff. I wish I was seeing you in person, although today I think it's colder in Texas than it is in Baltimore. So maybe I'm glad to be here, and I hope to see you soon.
Yes,
In the
definitely.
flesh.
Yeah, well, hopefully by the summer we'll be getting back to things later in the year. That'd be cool. Expo East is going to be the main show, I think in September. So that's hopefully we can
You
get
know,
to that.
Philly's just up the road from us. My wife's from Philly.
Backyard.
So yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. My wife's from Philly, so she knows all the good cheesesteak places. So that's what we do. That's
Well, this is, yeah, I mean, last year was the first year that been back in the US from China for so many years. Every time I went to Expo West, I had a 12-hour plus flight to deal with. And it was the first time I could just get on a plane and be in LA in less than 3 hours and just be like, oh God, that's gonna be great. But I guess we're gonna have to wait on that for a little while. Let's jump into this because we want to keep these kind of tight. People watching these don't have all the time in the world. So let's get an introduction to Brassica Protection Products. Like, what do you guys do? And give us a little intro.
Thanks. Brassica Protection Products is a 25-year-old company. We are actually a spinoff from Johns Hopkins and some technology at Johns Hopkins. And there were some basic scientists there who identified the compounds in broccoli and other cruciferous vegetables that are responsible for the health protective effects of these vegetables. And they actually came from a deep well of clinical science and cancer science and so forth. But they came to the conclusion that at some point we needed to be spending some time thinking about how to prevent disease or try to keep it, mitigate it rather than treat it. And they elucidated some cellular pathways that compounds from broccoli and other vegetables stimulate. So we are a science company, and we actually started out doing fresh broccoli sprouts like alfalfa sprouts. And about halfway through our existence, pivoted to making our primary business, making standardized, high quality, high concentration extracts of these compounds from broccoli. And one of the findings from Johns Hopkins were there are two key findings. One was that all broccoli was not the same. Much of it had much higher levels of these compounds than others of it, and there was no way for the consumer to tell. And also because these compounds are in the plant because they protect the plant from predators and deflect it, keep the predators going somewhere else. They actually are concentrated in the very small plants, the seeds or the sprouts, when the plant needs the most protection. So we have developed over the years a system of growing a particular selected type of broccoli seed that is very potent with respect to these particular compounds. It's something called glucoraphanin that converts to sulforaphane. And developing systems with farmers to reliably grow these and making a water extract of this. All our seeds are grown in Arizona and California and extracted here in North America. That is a potent deliverer of this plant antioxidant that has broad applications for a number of health conditions. The basic science really evolved to understanding that these compounds protect cells against oxidants and against toxins and against inflammation and even against UV radiation. So we sell our powder to a number of companies as a B2B, and that's what we do.
Well, that's the leading off of that and the science, because there's a lot of science behind that, and also the connection to Johns Hopkins. There was a China study. We were talking about that earlier. That just to try and tie in China to this
Hmm,
conversation. Um, let's talk a little bit about that study with it
sure.
was the broccoli kind of soup and carcinogens and all, and pollution and coal burning and all that stuff.
Well, there was a group from the public health school at Johns Hopkins which is now the Bloomberg Public Health School of Public Health, who were interested in environmental factors for a number of diseases, and they found a population in an undeveloped part of China in Qidong province, I think it's province, which is just north of Shanghai, and in the old days was hours and hours to get across to get there, and now is a quick high speed train away. And this was a population of subsistence farmers who did not. This is in the 80s. Did not have electrification. They grew a lot of corn, which they stored in their houses. They didn't have refrigeration. They didn't have any of those sorts of things. And they got a lot of aflatoxin, which is a mold that is a very potent carcinogen and cause of liver cancer. And what these guys said is, let us go into a population where perhaps 10% of the population is subject to liver cancer, and see if we can't bring some food or natural interventions that might help control the disease. And for the first years that they did the studies, they continued to study the detoxification of aflatoxin by a number of compounds, and then started using the broccoli compounds, the glucoraphanin and sulforaphane, and were able to show that the subjects in China were able to suppress the levels of aflatoxin in their systems, and therefore were protected against disease. Interestingly, they continued to work with different preparations of the broccoli and different dosage and so forth. And as time went on, of course, the economic miracle development of China took place, and these areas became, middle class and modern, in the sense that they, got electrification, got clean water. The health system was developed. They were all vaccinated for hepatitis, which is a cofactor for liver disease. So the original disease burden in these areas was actually lessened. However, they were still cooking over their traditional Chinese coal stoves, and the their environment was very polluted with not aflatoxin, with benzene and acrolein and a lot of nasty volatile chemicals that come from this kind of combustion.
Mm.
So the air was very, as you well know, the air can be quite polluted in China, and in this case, there were particular volatile chemicals that were dangerous to health. And so they were able to switch how they were doing the study to later studies. This is probably the study that was published in the around 2010, 2012, to actually look at, could the consumption of these broccoli compounds detoxify these airborne pollutants, the benzene and acrolein, which they were able to show. What was very interesting was that this really required them to develop a whole system of how to do clinical trials in these kinds of rural areas, and the subjects, or the villagers, were not unsophisticated, in the sense that they knew what they were educated, and they knew what was going on. They just didn't have all this electrification and so forth. And of the Shanghai Liver Cancer Institute and Johns Hopkins, of course, specified they were doing a clinical trial, and it was important that they obtained permission from the subjects to be subject to the institutional review board and so forth and so on. And when they first started doing this, the subjects were sophisticated enough to figure out that some of them were getting the test and some were getting the control. There was no way, because the two preparations were made identically to present identically. But they all said, well, you may be getting the test and I may be getting the control. So let's switch doses to make sure that we both get all the good stuff. And so they ended up eventually having to set it up so they bicycled around to each individual, gave them this rather foul tasting broccoli, not really a tea, but broccoli in water. And I hope Jeff, you'll show the slide of
Yeah.
really loving tasting this. And make sure they all took their own dose so they didn't break the control, the control and the dose calculations. And they did substantial size, these were substantial size trials, 200 or 300 subjects, and showed that they could in fact resist, diminish the burden of these kinds of pollutants on the population.
So the extract, or the kind of tea soup they gave them, it was helping them to excrete this like benzene out of their system.
Right. They could measure. They did blood plasma and urine measurements, and I find another slide which shows the urine had to be transported in 1 gallon buckets back to to the lab, which was in Shanghai, and so there was a truck full of urine going back and forth. I'll try to find the picture of that. But
so this goes into the whole plant-based diet thing, and why different plants have their own protective phytochemicals, etc., that to kind of protect them. And it makes sense, like you said earlier, like the seed and the youngling sprout, the initial stage of a plant, that's its most vulnerable. So it definitely makes sense, and that the seed would have a much higher concentration of these type of components. It's quite amazing.
Well, and look, this is not work that is germane to us, that was developed by us, but I mean, evolution has taken the 400 years that plants have been on the earth and not been able to run away from predators like animals. They've developed these incredibly complex overlapping systems of protection. And when you think about it, a plant needs sunlight, but for photosynthesis, of course, but if it has too much sunlight, it'll burn up. So the idea that these compounds could prevent damage from UV radiation, for example, plants have to take in and do metabolism, which creates oxidants, but they don't, they can't have too many of them. So they need to manage all those things. So the evolution it takes a long time. But it gets it, it manages to get it to be very clever over the span of many.
Yeah. And also the way you guys manufacture is using a water extraction system. And that really is interesting because, the food is medicine type thing goes right into, traditional Chinese medicine, how they use, boil, they actually just use water and boil the herbs and bark and different components of Chinese medicine to extract out a lot of these phytochemicals in there. And it's just amazing that, this stuff is there.
Well, and when we went to register broccoli seed extract in China, and we had to kind of describe it in Chinese, there was this whole question about, well, a water extract. Well, the traditional Chinese extracts are tinctures, and was this a tincture? And no, well, it's a dried powder extract, and this caused a lot of confusion. But again, the understanding that plants could help with health in this way was, of course, completely consistent with the basic tenets of TCM and
Sure.
so forth. And they were, the Chinese were way ahead of the West in figuring this out. So
yeah, definitely. So that leads us into another component here. Is just, let's talk a little bit about your company's expansion and working with different companies and making certain decisions about market entry in different places. And China, of course, is not very easy to market to enter. And essentially, this has happened to some other members of our association, which I should have mentioned in the beginning that you guys are definitely a long-term member of our group, and I'm thankful for that.
Glad to be there, Jeff. Wouldn't bail out for the world.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for all the support.
No, I mean, as an aside, you have been extremely helpful to us, introducing us to contacts in China and getting us information and helping put us in perspective, the things we're doing in perspective. And, when I said, gee, it's taking us forever to get registered in China, you said, oh, your registration was pretty fast, actually, by Chinese standards. So
one of the first things that you come up against is your ingredient food? Is it something that's traditionally food and used in the Chinese system that people can eat? Of course, broccoli seeds, broccoli is, but broccoli seeds are not. So once you hit that wall, then it's like this whole registration, regulatory headache to get through. So just talk a little bit about how you did
exactly.
that.
I mean, it was okay for us to market broccoli seeds, and broccoli, and the idea that you could grow it into broccoli sprouts. I mean, sprouts, baby vegetables, of course, are known, but just going directly from the broccoli seeds, which is by far the most, not only the most efficient, but the most effective, because you can control the quality so much better from a broccoli seed, because you don't, because you know exactly what you're extracting from, meant that we had to go through some regulatory hoops that were surprising. And it probably won't surprise the group to hear that in the U.S. we basically marketed broccoli seed extract from day one with the proviso that, look, it wasn't the extract wasn't materially changed from the broccoli plant, and people ate seeds, and there wasn't anything that different about it, and the sprout came from a seed and so forth. Well, that was that less sophisticated regulatory approach was not acceptable to other parts of the world. And so when a couple of our customers, who were global customers, who were wanting to put our extract, our ingredient, into global formulas, said, well, are you approved in China? And we said, well, no. And they said, well, we need to be. So we were actually driven by our customers, but it fit with kind of our philosophy of trying to do this the correct way. I mean, we want to do a very, very carefully and very clean, safe manufactured product. We never want anybody to worry about toxicity of our ingredients. We have all this, we have all this wonderful science, but we didn't want to make anybody sick. So, and frankly, I had answered to higher authorities, Johns Hopkins, and my father, even though he wasn't involved with the company when he was alive, was always keeping an eye on us. So going into China, we said, okay, well, we'd like to register this as a novel food ingredient. What do we need to do? And the Chinese said, well, do you have a grass in the US? And we said, well, we don't really need one, because it's not really a new dietary ingredient, and so forth. And they said, well, nobody, our advisors, some of whom Jeff introduced us to, said, look, they're not going to look at this unless you have a grass in the US. So we went and spent the many hundreds of thousands of dollars and a long time getting a grass in the US as a prelude to putting the dossier together for China. China looked at the data that we had. They had seen the clinical work, and of course this had been in a lot of humans without any issues whatsoever, but still they wanted some additional toxicological studies, which we commissioned specifically for China. They were published by a Chinese team in a global journal, some safety studies and so forth. And although I felt like it took us forever, we were told that between 2.5 and 3 years to get the registration was quite speedy. And again, we used resources in China that Jeff helped us qualify. And so we now are able to provide a whole dossier with all the safety information and everything to any country or any regulatory body that wants it. I mean, we are only registered as a novel food ingredient. We do not yet a Chinese company who would want to put this into a capsule form would still have to get a blue hat registration, which is an additional, of course,
Mm-hmm.
barrier. But our registration becomes a symbol of the attention we spent to quality, safety, manufacturing, doing the right thing, making sure that we have batch to batch and year to year consistency. And that's kind of, we try to, as a small company, we try to sort of punch above our weight. We think our science is world class, and we try to act like things that a bigger company would do. So we probably spend more money proportionately on some of this regulatory and toxicology work than many companies our size would do. But we believe it's important, and our customers believe it's important, and the customers that we've grown with have been ones that have stuck with us because they know this is what we do, and we're dedicated to it, and we don't cut corners, and that gives them confidence and safety that they are delivering safe, but also ingredients that do what they say they'll do. So we just, sorry, I was gonna, do you want me to talk about Korea or
not? Yeah, sure.
Time? I mean, we have time.
Yeah.
We could be talking. We could be talking for a long time here. I'll try to keep. No. So it turns out then that we thought we had done all the work we needed to do on this, and we said, and then we could not get this registered in Korea. The Korean FDA said, no, we don't have this study and you don't have that study. And I said, yeah, but we have it in all these human studies, and we have a grass, and we have China. And, in the end, I had to bite the bullet, and we ended up just finishing another round of 6 different toxicology studies that were done. They're actually done in the US to EU standards in order to present the dossier in Korea, which is where it is now. And we're very hopeful that it will get approved quite quickly because we did exactly what they asked us to do.
Mm-hmm.
But again, and this pertains to our particular way to make this from our types of seeds and our processes and the things that we do. And we think that is good for our customers and is a good way to run our business.
So it's been a lot of regulatory hurdles for something as simple as what you just think broccoli, but it is comes down to chemicals, phytochemicals, seed, and things that aren't normally eaten by people sometimes. But so for applications, how many customers do you have in terms of, not numbers, but in terms of people that are using it for a traditional dietary supplement in a dosage form, like a capsule or a tablet, compared to food-based companies that maybe include it in a sachet powder or put it into their product, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, we're about, I'd say we're about 60% traditional capsules and about 40% powders and sachets and beverages and so forth. We, as we've gone into Asia, and particularly, for example, in China, the first products that have been marketed in China have been sachets that have been positioned as foods and snacks.
Sure.
Yeah. And because we believe that diet is such an important part of health, that isn't we think it's hard to get high concentrations of this stuff, and we're glad that people can put concentrations in sachets, but we're very comfortable that this is part of a dietary strategy that we all want to implement for us. And the plants are pretty smart, and we need to follow what they're doing.
Exactly. Now, again, back to China, just before we close out here, because we're running a little long. You yourself are kind of I lived in China straight full time for 14 years. And a lot of people will say that, I'm kind of a China hand or whatever. And there's plenty of expats I've known living in China that were there 20, 30 years, much longer than I. But you landed foot in China back in, what was it, 1979 was your first trip there?
Yeah, well before before I became a broccoli maven and I was in regular business, I was always very interested in China and Japan and had wanted to travel and came across some people that were running trips to China in 1979, just after the U.S. was first had the embassy there. And of course, it's today to stand on the Bund in Shanghai and look across to Pudong, when in 1979 there was a swamp. There was nothing across the river, so it's kind of a pretty amazing transition. And I mentioned to Jeff that we took the train from on the way out. We took the train from Guangzhou to I think it was Guangzhou by that point. I don't think it was still Canton, referred to as Canton. We took the train to Hong Kong, and when you cross the border, there was this little border crossing and a little dirty little river, and it was called Samchun. And you switched from, you went through border control there. And today, Samchun is Shenzhen. So it's rather unbelievable.
Yeah, and Shenzhen is one of China's first tier huge IT sector. It's just an enormous successful city.
Hubs. Oh yeah. So anyway, so I've been lucky enough to go, in the early years as a tourist and just of interest, and then in the last number of years to work in this area, and it's always very exciting. And,
it's just year. I mean, this will be my first time when I actually get to go back. Will be the longest. I mean, I pretty much was there 11 months or more out of the year. This will be the first time back where it's been, close to 2 years. And I'm sure I'm going to see like, oh, that building wasn't there. This wasn't there. That wasn't there. It's amazing. All right. Well, Tony, thank you very much for your time and introduction to your business and some of your, market entry stories. Of course, you have a lot more stories than that, but we'll keep this as short as possible. I look forward to seeing you.
Try to keep it down to a dull roar and not overwhelm everybody.
I look forward to seeing you soon. Hope maybe Expo East will be the next time, I think in September. If not, then shortly thereafter.
Well, and certainly to all the members of the association, Jeff will put up my email. I'd be happy to give any insights or tell you about any scars that I've gotten on the way around doing this over the years. And but we're all doing something in service to try to make a healthier world, which is pretty important. So we're glad to be a part of it.
Yes, it is. Definitely. Tony, thank you. Take care during this time, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Wonderful, Jeff. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in to HPA Global Insights. Please like, subscribe, and share with your colleagues. Any questions or suggestions, email us at info@uschinahpa.org. This channel is operated by U.S. China Health Products Association, which is a nonprofit organization. Please consider joining the association and supporting its global endeavors. Your support is very much appreciated. Until next time, take care.